Track Record with your hosts Mike Shea and Robert Yetter. Brought to you by Eventide Entertainment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Track Record. I am one of your hosts, Mike Shea.
I am the other one of your hosts, Robert Yetter.
And we're in for some storytelling today, kids. We're going to tell some stories. This is going to be an interesting learning experience of an episode, I think. This week we're going to be talking about albums that have fascinating backstories, fascinating, creepy, interesting, mysterious backstories. Robert, you were the one who came up with the idea for this theme. Why don't you tell them where you got the idea from?
Yeah. What episode was that? I think it was last episode.
It was last week, yeah.
I made the comment how you really take into account either the person or the band or, the history, the story of an album while you're listening to it. And I thought that was really interesting. And so that kind of morphed into this week's theme. And I thought that it was kind of unique the way that you listen to music. You very much take into account more things than just the music. That gives you a different appreciation.
So I inspired you is what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, you did.
But yeah, no, that's just the way I've always, because I've always been that kid who's like, yeah, I know my joke's not that good, but look at how hard I worked writing it. I know my thing's not that good, but I worked really hard on it. So I know the sex wasn't that good, but man, was I into it. So yeah.
I tried.
I really tried. Can I get an A for effort?
Yeah.
How about a B? So that was. This was a fun one to really think about. We stewed over what albums we were going to give for a while because it came down to like, does the album have an interesting story or are there just neat little facts about it?
Right.
And I think we agreed that we wanted ones that had good stories to tell.
Yeah.
So, because I one of the ones I was thinking about giving you was the Seth MacFarlane "Music Is Better Than Words" album.
I have not even heard of that.
He did a couple albums that are all just like old big band and swing jazz covers.
Oh.
And they're one. I mean, because if you've watched Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane can sing. And,
well, if you've watched Sing as well.
Yeah.
He can sing.
And but the album he actually recorded it in Sinatra's old studio.
There you go. He's got a good voice.
He does, and the album is amazing. But again, it was like that's a neat fact that he recorded it in Sinatra's studio.
Right.
But not an interesting story. So
or like Trent Reznor, taking the door of what was it, Manson's house or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And putting it on the front of his studio.
That was weird. That happened. So, but again, that's like something that happened behind the scenes, but didn't have anything to really do with the album making process. So that was kind of where we kind of got a little specific with this. But I think we came up with two interesting stories behind pieces of music.
I believe we did.
We're going to have an adventure today. So, as is custom, before we really dive into it, Robert, what are you drinking?
I am drinkless.
You're drinkless?
No. Yeah.
You got to work in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't normally stop me from having, just a drink, but I don't know, just don't feel like it.
I feel you. I just got home from open mic night, and I'm drinking a Strongbow Cherry Blossom.
Oh, it sounds really good.
I finally found some.
I was gonna pick up a sixer of that, and I should have. I was gonna save my mountain ales that I got instead of the Strongbow, but I drank them all because we're recording this late, and so they're all gone.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
Well, right. I think it's your turn to go first, Robert. So why don't you? Well, I guess I'll tell everybody what I gave you.
Yes.
So the album. So again, we were talking about stories that had albums that had interesting stories in the recording process. And for this week, I finally found an excuse to give Robert an album by the band Avenged Sevenfold. And the one I chose was the album Nightmare. Now, some of the more dedicated fans out there already kind of know the story we're going into, but maybe if you're a more casual listener or haven't listened to them at all, this album's got a creepy story behind it. So, Robert, I'll let you take it from there.
See, you said it was creepy. I don't know if it's very, very creepy. It just kind of like, so here's basically the gist of it is that, in 2009, while they were, they were pretty much done writing this album Nightmare, and their drummer died. His name was James the Rev Sullivan. They called him Jimmy. And so before they got the chance to, they wrote everything, but they hadn't recorded anything. And he died before, like a couple weeks before they were about to go in the studio and lay down all the tracks. And so I thought it was really cool. I don't know that it's creepy, but they had the gentleman from Dream Theater, the drummer, Mike
Portnoy,
who was, kind of an idol of Jimmy's, and they actually had him play drums on the record, and so that was a really cool, ode to him. What's interesting is how his death kind of shaped the songwriting, and they kind of shifted the meaning of all the songs, to kind of be, in line with how they were feeling, because of the Rev's passing. And there's always, I was listening to an album earlier this month that had kind of, a person who had passed away, and they had already kind of recorded some stuff that they used, in the final product. And in some respects, that might be the creepy part. But, and you can hear him singing on there, and there's, a lot of the songs he wrote, or had a big hand in writing. So, that's pretty much the gist of it. They kind of wanted to make this album really, really dark and really sad, and because of their drummer's passing. So a very interesting story. And one interesting thing to note is that this was their first album to debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200, and their drummer who helped them rise to such success never got to really see that happen, and so it was kind of a bittersweet thing to happen. So Nightmare, it was released in 2010, and this is the first time that I've ever listened to Avenged Sevenfold. Like you said, you've been waiting for a chance to give it to me, and I've abstained from listening to them at all. It's a band that I've known about since, high school. And this is another one of those bands that has just the largest and most loyal fan base that any band could ever ask for. All of their records, top the charts, aside from their first couple probably. Again, this one debuting at number 1, first ever number 1 record, critically acclaimed. But in the same vein as my thoughts on Breaking Benjamin, I really don't understand the outpouring of love for this band. They seem to me to be kind of a Metallica clone with a little bit worse singing and lyricism, and just a slight touch more of the gothicism, but more like a new age kind of watered down gothicism rather than like a Behemoth or a Cradle of Filth type gothicism. I like that word, gothicism. Essentially, to me, they sound like Good Charlotte playing Metallica cover songs. But I will say the one good thing about this record, and probably about the band in general, is how well they play guitar. The guitar is always really fun, and I love the solos. I love the harmonized guitar solos. You can never go wrong with those. The guitar players are Sinister Gates and Zacky Vengeance. They really get melodic and creative, and they play their guitars very cleanly. I thought that the guitar work on this record was outstanding. What the biggest thing that got to me was I noticed that there's a lack of serious tone to the way M. Shadows sings, when parts that are being played should be conveyed as emotional, the quieter ballady parts. He doesn't have a serious tone, a serious style, and this makes me uneasy as a listener, because it shows me that the singer is either lacking that ability or is emotionally unfeeling, and I'm going to assume that it's not the latter. And while we are on the subject of M. Shadows and his voice, he's got a cool name, I'll give him that. I just have to say that after every song that I listen to, I really just want to give that guy like some hot Earl Grey with a shot of honey. It's really hard to listen to him because it sounds like he's just actively destroying his throat. He sings from the throat, and it sounds painful. And that's all I can think about when I listen to it. It's like, oh, God, get that man some tea. And two, if he's not destroying his throat, then he's singing through the nose, which is and has always been a no-no when it comes to vocal performance. Now, I read an interview with M. Shadows, and I learned that he blew out his voice some years back and subsequently took vocal lessons for about 6 years, he said, 3 to 4 times a week. Now, that's a lot of training to still sound so lackluster. And I also read that this man has also won what's called a Golden God Award for Best Vocalist. And I really don't get it. So, this album is certainly a letdown for me after learning the story behind it. I don't feel any of the emotion or darkness that this album is supposed to have. All the members they have these interviews where they're saying, oh, it's our darkest, lyrically sad and album that we've ever made. But it just doesn't come off like that. Maybe I'm a sociopath. I don't know. But I think that the story of the album creates more emotion than the music itself. There were some enjoyable songs. I'll point a few out. One of my absolute favorites, actually my favorite on the album, because if every Avenged Sevenfold song sounded like this, I'd probably listen to them. It's a song called God Hates Us. Now, the guitar work on this, as I said, is just masterful. And it's a very metal song compared to the rest of the album. The lyricism is still dull, but everything else was interesting and enjoyable. I like the song called Tonight the World Dies. Again, excellent guitar work, especially the bass in this one, which really shines. And I love the contrasting sounds coming together on this track. It makes it really stand apart from any other track on the record. That's a play on our show name, by the way.
Aha.
I like the song Fiction, which was the one pretty much completely written by Jimmy, who passed away. It's got really nice piano that has this gothic medieval melody to it. And it's a very enticing song. The vocals suck on that song, but I really like the piano. And I like the last song, if you're not including the bonus track. It's called Save Me. This one, they turn to a more symphonic metal style. And it really just shows you how well they do the gothic metal, way better than they do those ballady songs. So I think I'm going to give this album 2 out of 4 purple stars. It's not terrible. I mean, the guitar, I really loved it. But again, the story's definitely touching, and I love that they really tuned the album to be a tribute to their fallen bandmate, and it being their first number one, it's really cool, and I love that they got to enjoy that kind of success in honor of their good friend, but the execution of the album falls short with me, aside from the astounding guitar work, and for that, it gets 2 out of 4 stars.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I said the story was creepy, there's actually a part of the story that you didn't touch on. I don't know.
Maybe I didn't catch the whole thing, but
it could be. I'll tell you. There was an article I was trying to find for you that I was never able to find. The album itself was being demoed before the Rev passed away, and the song "Fiction" you're talking about. The reason that it's so creepy to me is really in the circumstances surrounding his death. He had been writing. He wrote almost the entire album himself. He had a huge part in the writing process this time around. And when they were in the process of demoing, he was a multi-instrumentalist. He played guitar, he played drums, he played piano. In the article, the guitarist Zach, he talks about how the Rev showed up at his door with a disc and said, "Hey, I just wrote this song. This is the last song we need for the album. We're done after this. This is the last song for the album." And he handed him the disc, and that had Fiction on it. He had written and recorded Fiction all on his own. Handed him the disc, went home, and was dead the next morning. And if you listen to,
right.
And there was just this whole, and in the article, all the guys talk about how there was this. When they had first started going when they got signed to Warner Brothers and were able to have a budget for merch and stuff like that, they had these Sevenfold leather jackets that were custom made that never sold. But Jimmy had designed them and he thought they were the coolest shit. So he had one and he wore it to every show. It was like his favorite jacket or whatever. And they had a get together to, work on the demos and stuff like that at the one at Sinister's house, at Gates' house. And he had hung his jacket up on the coat rack, and then when he left, he forgot his jacket. And Gates called him and said, "Hey, you've got your jacket." And the Rev told him, "Oh, it's okay. I don't need it. Don't worry about it." Like in the week leading up to his death, it was little things like that, like leaving his jacket somewhere, this prized possession of his, writing this gothic, depressing song about death, featuring himself on vocals, dropping it off saying, "This is the last thing you need for the album," and just leaving. A lot of stuff like that. He was always a guy who had always said that he would be dead before he was 30. That was kind of this thing that he wasn't like a huge drug user or stuff like that. Just a lot of weird coincidences that kind of started piling up one after another, that after he died, the guys were like, well, wait, the other day he just said this. The other day he did this. What the fuck is going on? Right. So there was a lot of talk for a while about whether or not it was a suicide or if he just kind of knew he was going to die. And so that's kind of the creepy part of the story I was referring to, just this weird, like, did he kill himself? Did he know he was going to die? Was it just freak coincidence? It was a lot of flags that nobody picked up on until it was too late, I guess. So
right.
Yeah, I mentioned going into this too when I gave Robert the album right off the bat. It's not my favorite Avenged Sevenfold album. To me, this album does not stand up to the rest of their catalog. They are a band who every album sounds different. Their very first album was very hardcore punk. Their second album was more traditional metalcore. Their third album was more like hard rock. It's not hard rock, but just like 80s, almost like 80s speed metal. And then you had their self-titled album after that, which was really experimental. Every song was a different genre fused with their kind of traditional sound. And then you have this one, and they've continued that trend even in the two albums since Nightmare. So admittedly, yeah, like when I listen to it's rare that I listen to Nightmare on its own. There's maybe 2 or 3 songs on that album that I'm a consistent fan of. One of them is Tonight the World Dies. I think that's the best song on the album. I think it's a really well written, really well crafted song. I'm also a fan of Fiction. I'm also a huge fan of Buried Alive. Mostly because it's a song with a gentle build up and then just a heavy, brutal climax at the end. But yeah, it's not an album that I revisit on any regularity. 2 out of 4. I mean, it's probably the bottom of my list. And not to say that it's a bad album, but it's the bottom of my list. I think other than the guitars, I mean, the drums were on point because it was Mike Portnoy. Mike Portnoy is a god among drummers, but
right.
Shadow's vocals to me were not on point for this album. Johnny Christ, who I think is one of the best bass players in metal, is not, other than a couple of songs here and there. It's just nobody was really up to snuff with this one, I think. I enjoy So Far Away as far as a rock ballad goes. They played that at the show I went to last year, and it was great to see it performed live. But yeah, I hated that this was the first foray into Sevenfold for you. I think there were better albums you could have been introduced with, but as far as the story goes behind the album, it was kind of hard not to pick this one for me.
Understood.
Yeah, I had a lot to choose from, but this one just to me felt like it had a great story. So, but I'm not going to contest your 2 out of 4. That's about where I fall with it too. So,
all right,
cool. So, with that being said, we are going to take a brief pause and some applause and promote some stuff, promote some things. And when we come back, I will talk about the album that Robert gave to me with its dark ass story. So stick around. We'll be right back.
The weekdays are made for working, but the weekends, those are made for gaming. Join Ellison Smith every Saturday for a new episode of Saltwater Gaming as he breaks down video games of all different genres, consoles, platforms, and eras. Get a bit of the old and a bit of the new, a bit of the action and a bit of the mystery. Get it all every Saturday on Saltwater Gaming, brought to you by Eventide Entertainment. There's a reason they call them lazy Sundays. There's nothing better than sitting around and enjoying the comforts of a good book. But what book should that be? Well, every Sunday, Eventide brings you The Bookseller, hosted by Jessica Gillen. Each week, Jessica breaks down a different book and tells you everything you need to know before cracking it open and getting lost in a whole new world. Tune in every Sunday for The Bookseller with Jessica Gillen, brought to you by Eventide Entertainment. You know, there's nothing quite as satisfying as a good conversation with intelligent company. Join comedian Don Smith every week as he sits down and talks with comedians, actors, filmmakers, writers, and everyday schmoes. It's The Life with Don Smith, Wednesdays at noon on 106.9 FM, and now available on the Eventide Entertainment podcast feed every Friday on Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Track Record. We're talking stories. We just
Story time.
We just got done listening to my take on Nightmare by Avenged Sevenfold. 2 out of 4 perps for that one. Interesting story. Definitely some strange coincidences, strange events surrounding this album. Let me talk about the album that I gave you.
Oh boy.
It's kind of this band, one-man band, is called Burzum. And kind of in a infamous black metal artist from Norway. And there's kind of it's this album that is called what was it?
Belus.
Belus. That's right. It was the first one to come out after his release from prison, and so that's kind of why that one was chosen to be the one. But I'm going to let you talk about that. You have Belus by Burzum.
Doesn't have a pronunciation. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the story of Varg help me out here. Vikernes. Thank you. Vikernes. I'm going to go redneck on it. Vikernes. Varg Vikernes. Varg is, if you're really tapped into the black metal scene, you know who Varg is. If you're familiar with the story of the churches in Norway being burned down, things like that, Varg Vikernes is a weird motherfucker. That's all I can really say. He's a weird guy.
Yeah, he's got a special brain.
He has a very special brain. He created his own religion. He's people have often mistakenly called him a Satanist, and even Satanists are like, no, don't loop us in with that guy.
Yeah.
He follows a religion called Odalism. I'm not going to spend any more time on that than I have to. He made his own religion. It's called Odalism. Google it. What's interesting about the story for this album, Belus, which is the name itself, is a reference to the oldest known what are called life, death, birth deities, which are like Apollo, Belanus, Belobog. Jesus is one of them, the ones who live, die, and come back to life.
Yeah.
And Belus is a proto-Indo-European deity, whatever that means. But that's what the album is named after. There's a lot of lyrical references to Lucan, who is kind of their version of Loki. Kaimadalthus, which is kind of like Heimdall. There's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of references to other versions of Norse gods. Kelio, who is equivalent to Hel, which is the god of death and the underworld. But this album was released in 2010 after an 11-year hiatus because Varg was in prison. Now, in Norway, when you go to jail for murder, they actually, you don't get a life sentence or the death penalty. He was sentenced to 21 years in prison for murder and was released after 16 of those years on parole. Burzum is very much a one-man band. He being Varg, does all of the vocals, lyrics, guitars, bass, drums, synth. Occasionally we'll have a guest musician, but he does it all himself. And the album went through a rigorous production process because the label kept having to tell him to rename the tracks and stuff and the album itself, because he at one point he named it Den Hevet Guden, which in Norwegian translates to the White God, and they were like, that sounds a little racist. Can we not do that, please? He's got a lot of things, Belus's Death, River of Forgetfulness are the titles that are on there now, but apparently just he went through such a rigorous naming process for his songs and his album because the label kept saying, like, that sounds evil. That's racist. That's blatantly evil. That inside, like, Varg, dude, you just got out of prison. Come on.
Yeah.
Chill, please. So that, yeah, it was a process just getting the damn thing named and cataloged. When it was released, people, it got better reception than I think a lot of people expected, because the thing about Varg is that once he got out of prison, he had to change his name. He still goes by the name Varg, like, with his friends and family, but he actually he's born in France. He legally changed his name to Louis Cachet, just for like the sake of like filling out paperwork and talking to people in public. Like, who are you? Oh, I'm Lou. My name's Lou. Yeah, totally not Varg. You've probably seen pictures of Varg and don't realize it. When he was put on trial for, there were these 3 Christian churches in Norway that were burned down, that he was allegedly involved in the burning of them, and was put on trial for arson, and is known for saying something to the effect of, "I didn't do it, but if I had, man, it would have been great. And I didn't do it, but I'm not saying I'm against it either," like that kind of thing. But there's this image that's circled around the internet for years it's a picture of him looking into the TV camera at trial and just smiling, and everyone's like, God, he's so charming and attractive and evil. Like he at the time was a ridiculously attractive, charming looking dude, but like it was kind of like Hannibal Lecter. It's like, man, I want him to like me. But what ended up happening was in 94 he was found guilty of murder, and as well as the church arsons. He was sentenced to 21 years in prison. He maintained up till this day that he killed in self-defense, but maintains that he had nothing to do with the church burnings. We'll probably never know.
23 stab wounds in self-defense.
Yeah, like you do. And so there was just, when he announced that he was coming back and putting out this new album, everybody was just kind of like, it was kind of like when Mel Gibson started making movies again after the whole anti-Semitism thing happened. Everybody was kind of like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, really? Are you sure? And the reception of the album was about on par with that. People weren't sure what to think. All Music gave it a 3.5 out of 5, saying that it was, it was good. It's hard to separate it. It's hard to separate art from life. There are some definite, gems in here. Same thing with Metal Storm. Metal Storm gave it a 6.9 out of 10, none of which are bad scores, but none of which are great scores. So you kind of have to wonder, were they scoring it honestly, or were people just having a hard time disconnecting from like, hey, this is good, but this guy made it. It was really hard to say. So the reception of the album itself can be taken with a grain of salt because of the circumstances surrounding the guy who made the album.
Yeah.
Onto the album itself. I'm not like, I don't have anything against black metal. I just don't listen to a lot of it. So getting into black metal albums like this for me is always a little tough, just because it's not something I do very often. That being said, I'm kind of on par with how critics felt about it. It was decent. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. I was not the biggest fan of his vocal style. It was a little weird to me. It was kind of shrieky, kind of like Banshee-esque. The music, the production of the album itself seemed very low budget. Like it was, again, considering the circumstances of this dude coming back into music, I imagine it was probably hard for him to get funding for the album. For those who don't know how a record label works, when you go to make an album, what ends up happening is you're basically allotted it's like getting financial aid for college. You're allotted a certain dollar amount to use at a studio. And then after that, everything else comes out of your pocket. And for this particular album, it seems like maybe he just wasn't given a very big recording budget. Like the label was just trying to give him some money to shut him up and get the album made and see if they could get a return on investment with it. Which I'm not sure if it did or not, but that's kind of how the production felt to me. Like this was something that the studio didn't have a lot of faith in. The label didn't have a lot of faith in, but so they wrote a check, said, "Here, do what you can with this," and he did what he could with it. I don't know if a bigger production budget would have helped. I feel like I'm not familiar with the earlier stuff or the later stuff from this, so I don't know how it compares to the rest of it. I could definitely sense the theme that he was going for. It seemed a little. It almost seemed like it was trying to prove some kind of point to the rest of the black metal scene. I'm not sure if it did successfully. Varg is well known for being very outspoken against the modern black metal scene. He's often referred to modern black metal as tasteless, lowbrow parody of early Norwegian black metal. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it kind of felt like he made this album with that mentality of like, I'll show them what real fucking black metal is. They don't know what black metal is. I'll show them what black metal is. I know there was anybody who listens to this who's a nerd, you'll recognize a lot of the references to, again, Norse mythology, Tolkienism. He's well known big fan of the Lord of the Rings universe, world, whatever you want to call it. So there's hints of that in this as well. Per the usual, I'm a sucker for introductory tracks. This one was not lacking in that. It was a short one, 33 seconds. Very simple. Nothing overly complicated about it. Just a nice, simple interlude to get the album started. But then it just kind of kicks into high gear pretty quick. I felt like in his attempt to prove a point about early black metal versus modern black metal, that he found himself backed into a corner. And having spent 16 years in prison away from, his music, it felt a little unpolished. Which, on one hand, it's like, well, he hadn't practiced in 16 years. But on the other hand, it's like, well, he hadn't practiced in 16 years because he killed somebody and went to prison. So I don't feel too bad for him, but I can understand the frustration of walking away from something for a while and coming back. Oh, I'm not as good at this as I remember. Well, you got to practice. It's hard to practice black metal in a Norwegian prison, but
yeah, that's why he released a dark ambient album.
Yeah,
in prison.
Yeah, he did. That happened. That's another thing. That's another story. But so yeah, I had a really hard time trying to figure out what to make of this album. But pretty much kind of agree with what a lot of the critics said. He was onto something with it from a musical standpoint, but he just didn't quite get there for me. Now, again, I don't have a lot of experience with black metal, so I don't really know how to compare this to most modern or early black metal on its own. I could just take it for what it is and take it for what the process was in making the album. The best I can do with this is a 2.5 out of 4 for Purple Stars.
Okay.
Yeah, it was hard to wrap my head around what was going on, and I'll give the story 4 out of 4. It's a weird, messed up story behind this album. I'll give that 4 out of 4, but the album itself, 2.5 out of 4 stars is about as good as I can do. It was just as a black metal album, it was all right. I'm curious to hear more black metal, maybe from other bands, maybe not so much from Burzum. But as far as this being my first real in-depth plunge into black metal, I wasn't disappointed, but I also wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I didn't think that you were going to have a very good time with this genre. I've never known you to delve into it at all.
It's just not. It's not like I've been avoiding it. I've just never been presented with black metal in a way that I really absorbed it. It would just be like, oh, there's a black metal song, and I'd hear it, and then something else would come on.
It's a very interesting subgenre of metal. It really is. It just the concepts behind behind black metal are really weird. I feel like a lot of black metal is intentionally lo-fi sounding. Almost like it's kind of like the shoegaze of metal. They take the
I could see that. Yeah.
They take the distortion to new heights, and they take the reverb to new heights, and just kind of go crazy with that kind of staticky wall of sound.
Yeah, and that can be that because I like shoegaze just fine, but even I admit at times that can be a bit much for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, man.
Yeah. So. Yeah, like I said, I'll give the story 4 out of 4. I love a good conspiracy. Did this guy burn down churches or did he not? Did he stab a man violently 23 times or was it in self-defense?
Well, he said, a lot of the cuts were from the glass. That there was apparently some a broken window or some shit.
Yeah, and gloves covered in leather don't shrink when they sit on a shelf for 6 months. Yeah, okay. That's none of my business.
Well, that's so weird to me that their maximum sentence in Norway is only 21 years
for murder.
Yeah,
and bear in mind, they didn't just convict him of murder; they also convicted him of the church burnings.
Right.
So the 3 church burnings, arson, and murder only added up to 21 years, and he was out in 16.
Yep.
Man, that's just again, I grew up in an American legal system, so I guess I'm just used to the way we do things. I understand not every country does things the same way, and that's fine. But that just seems odd to me.
Well,
yeah.
Norway, that's some of the happiest people on the earth.
Yeah.
I think they only work 30 hours a week, get 7 weeks vacation a year. They got weird happiness over there.
Yeah, it's so weird that people can be happy.
Yeah, and all it takes is not working all the time.
Norway is easily like the most metal country in the world too. Like,
oh yeah, that part of the world
metal comes out of Norway.
Just dark, but I don't know why, because it's the happiest people live there.
Oh shit!
So weird. The land.
I love how like these Norwegian bands will write several albums about, you know, Norse gods and mythology, and everyone's like, that's cool. But as soon as like a Christian band writes a metal album, it's like, what the fuck are you putting religion in your metal for? It's like every fucking band in the world puts religion in their music, man. It's I don't know.
Well, that's because people have a hard time calling Christianity a mythology, which, I mean, it definitely, in my opinion, is. But, you know, in this country that we live in, it's not really seen like that.
The way of life,
right?
Hashtag Jesus take the wheel.
So, I mean, but there's, you know, I mean, I put a lot of Christian religious, you know, imagery in my music.
I don't have a problem with Christian imagery in music. I don't have a problem with Christian music in general. It's when it's, you know, preachy that I have a problem.
Oh yeah. And I don't think that anyone who, you know, these Norwegian or these bands are being preachy with their, you know, kind of pagan gods. It's just exploring the mythology. That's all. It's just interesting shit.
Hell yeah, it's good stuff. It makes for great stories. Oh, look at that.
Ooh.
We just went full circle with this shit.
Full circle. So good.
This was a, you know, I will say, like, even though we didn't necessarily love each other's albums, this was a fun episode to do because we got to learn some cool shit.
Yes, we did.
We got to read some cool stories and learn some cool stuff. And it's all about fun here. Even if we don't always like the music, it's all about fun.
And hate.
And occasionally hate. Go back and listen to the last episode if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I wrote a thesis last episode.
He wrote a thesis about how much he hates Breaking Benjamin. It's great. Oh, man. Well, hey, listen, guys. That's gonna about do it for us today. I have not declared whether or not we have a show yet, but I will declare that we do have a Twitter account now. If you guys would like to follow along with us on Twitter and interact with us, suggest some show themes, just have some fun, you can actually follow us at Track Record EE on Twitter. And you really should, especially because Psycho Stick apparently is checking us out on Twitter from our Psycho Stick and Ninja Sex Party episode. So, hey, if we're good enough for Psycho Stick, we're good enough for you.
It's a bold statement.
Hashtag Gary Busey eating potato salad.
Oh,
that is.
Haven't mentioned Gary Busey in a little while.
No, we have not. But that is pinned right to the top of our Twitter feed. You will see hashtag Gary Busey loves potato salad, because he does.
You've got to give me something truly revolting so I can make some more Gary Busey jokes.
Oh man, we'll have to see what happens for next week. One of these days, we're going to do an episode that's just like, here's something that sucks. I want you to rip it apart.
Oh well, I think we have our next episode then.
Maybe, just maybe. We'll see. Who knows? All right, cool. Well, guys, make sure you go to www.eventideent.com. Lots of great music and podcasts coming out. We got great stuff coming up here in the next few months. New music, some shows moving around, all kinds of goodness, all kinds of fun. And make sure you tune in same day next week, same time, 9 a.m. next Wednesday for another great episode of Track Record. Robert.
Yes, sir.
I think we have a show.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
He said the thing. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're gonna leave you be now.
Okay. Goodbye.
All right. Bye, everybody.
It's always hard saying goodbye.
Have some sex. Fucking. They're fucking. They're fucking making music simultaneously.